Hey, Autumn Athletes, Larry Sorensen here, and today I'm going to connect with Bill Rosenblatt, find out what makes him an Autumn athlete that's not done yet. But before we do, please remember, if you like our content, like, subscribe, and ding that bell for notifications. Okay, let's get this thing started. Bill, why don't you start us off by telling us a little about yourself?
Hey, Larry. Well, number one, thanks for having me. I'm 76 years old. Currently, in the winters, I live in Rincon, Puerto Rico, and in the summers, I live in Ocean Township, New Jersey. So I split my time. I'm a widower. I'm a retired psychologist, although you never really retire from that. I've got 2 adult children and 5 grandkids. And my passion really has been surfing.
All right, so let's take a little step back in time and give us a little background on your fitness life, going as far back as you'd like to go.
Well, I've always been an athlete. You know, when I was in elementary school, played baseball. High school, I lettered in baseball and in football, despite my, I'm kind of small. I'm 5'3", and I currently weigh about 158. I think I was 147 when I graduated high school. I played baseball and football, and then in college, I played a lot of intramurals, baseball, football. And then after college, same thing. I played a lot of softball. I've been surfing since I was 14, so I'm 76. It's a long time.
Sure.
And I've always surfed. And then in the late 60s, I discovered yoga. So I started doing yoga as well, which has been kind of a constant in my life. I would lie if I said I practice yoga every day for long periods of time, but I'm pretty regular, you know, at least 20 minutes a day of stretching, yoga. I went through a period of my life when I thought it'd be fun to try to run. When I was working on my doctorate, I was up to 6 miles a day and hated every minute of it. So I could never find what a runner's high was. I did like, and I'll say did in the past, I've always been a swimmer as well. I was a lifeguard, ocean lifeguard, and a lifeguard. But I have arthritis and bone spurs in my right shoulder. So I save those strokes for surfing. And in the summer, when I'm in New Jersey and it's pretty flat, I bike ride. I have an old-fashioned no-speed bike. I live 2 miles from the beach, and I can ride back and forth there or ride on the boardwalk for, you know, an hour or so. And I do walk a lot. I try to get my 10,000 steps in every day. It's both good for me and for my dog. And I think those are pretty much the things that keep me going. And I really work. You know, when you're a surfer, you work hard so you can continue to surf.
So we're going to talk a little bit in a few minutes specifically about what you do for training now and so forth. But first, I kind of want to just ask you if you had any kind of inspirations along the way, whether it was back in your early days or even now. Was there any people or particular person that inspires you or inspired you back then?
There have been quite a few. One of the first people to inspire me was a surfer, actually, Dr. Ricky Gregg, who's a renowned oceanographer and was a big wave surfer way back in the 60s, one of the first people in Hawaii, surf Waimea. I ultimately did get to meet Ricky and surf with him, but he showed me that you could be a surfer and be an academic. He went on to pursue his doctorate. And I thought, well, that was pretty cool inspiration. So Ricky has been always important. There's a kind of a legendary deceased guy in surfing, Dorian Paskowitz, Doc Paskowitz, who wrote a book many years ago called Surfing and Health, which was very important, very influential in my life, as was Doc. One of my favorite things that Doc wrote about and used to say is, just because you're not sick doesn't mean you're healthy. And both in my practice and in life, that's a really important way to look at fitness. I think the way he put it was, health is more than the mere absence of illness, which was, I think he credited Eleanor Roosevelt for that comment. So those two have been very influential to me. Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, and he's been quite the outdoorsman, athlete, and I love his philosophy, his ethos. Of course, I love the company as well. And those have been some of the biggest inspirations for me and continue to be. And now I'm also inspired now by, a lot of the young guys who continue to surf. Kelly Slater, who's 52, and although he's 11-time world champion in surfing, the oldest and the youngest world champion. He's been on a tour for 30-something years. So he kind of is an inspiration as well.
So have you had any kind of setbacks along the way, whether it was earlier on or just in recent times?
The biggest setback I've had really popped up about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago or so, where I started to experience a lot of discomfort in my right shoulder. And surfing, swimming, that's an important part of what we do. Went through the whole process. I have a couple friends who are sports medicine docs. So I got, went through diagnostics. So I have arthritis and bone spurs and a lot of degeneration. 65 plus years of being an athlete, 70 years of being an athlete, throwing a baseball, throwing a football, paddling, swimming. It's a lot of wear and tear on your shoulder. So about 3 years ago, it was probably at its worst. I was having difficulty paddling, consulted with my doc. I was in physical therapy for about 6 months, altered what I do in my yoga, and continue at home every day to do what I did in physical therapy. And thankfully, that's really helped. I can still surf for 2-3 hours at a day without significant pain. I'm considering right now PRP, see if that'll work for my shoulder. Not that my shoulder's problematic, but why wait till it gets problematic? And probably over the past 4 years, at about 6-8 month intervals, I've had to have injections, cortisone injections in my shoulder. But thank goodness, it's really not been a problem. And I would say that's kind of been my biggest setback. Although there was one year, probably about 15 years ago, I wanted to train for some mini tries and stepped off my stand-up paddleboard and broke my ankle right at the beginning of that season.
Right.
So much for that. But I've been very, thankfully, I've been very healthy, and except for my shoulder, that's the only setback.
Have you competed at all in surfing throughout the years? And if so, give us some highlights on some of your best achievements.
Well, I was never much of a competitive surfer. Back when I was young, hadn't really no interest in competing. When my son was a teenager, he was competing a little bit, so I would take him to contests and do a little competing there in the older age groups. So I find that in surfing, the older you get, the more likely you can win a division. So that happened for quite a few years, where one year I won both shortboard, longboard, and paddleboard in a couple of New Jersey ESA contests. About 30 years ago, I was one of the people, we started a contest in Manasquan, New Jersey in the summer, Manasquan Classic Longboard Contest, where you have to ride pre-1968 old longboards. And so that's in September, and I surf in that every year. It's one of the few contests I'm in, both because it's fun to ride those old longboards, and also just for the entry fee, it's worth surfing Manasquan Inlet with only 4 other people. And I've done pretty well in that. I've various years I've won medals in that, and the other contest that I regularly do. This is the 10th anniversary here in Puerto Rico of the Legends Classic. So I've surfed in that for every year in 10 years. And a couple of years I won shortboard and longboard. And interestingly enough, for older athletes, this year I prompted them to start an over 70 division. And there were 8 of us. Parenthetically, as a goof, about 3 years ago, I started a Facebook page called Surfers 70 and Over, just to see how many of us there were. The Facebook group now has 45,000 people worldwide. Not all of them are active surfers. I don't think all of them are over 70, but there are a lot that are. And if you look at that Facebook group, you'll realize. So that's the extent of my competition. There's a wonderful quote that I kind of aspire to, and it's in surfing, it's someone was asked, who's the best surfer? And the response was, whoever's out there having the most fun.
So in order to keep surfing and having fun surfing, you got to have your body in condition. So you mentioned a little bit about some of the things you do with your routine, but why don't you give us a good outline of what you do physically, walking, training, lifting, whatever it is that you do to keep yourself in shape so you can have fun surfing.
That's a big part of my life. When I'm in my home in New Jersey, I actually have a pretty nice gym in my house. I have, I use a lot of light weights. And in Puerto Rico, I substitute water jugs and rocks for the light weights. I don't have my dumbbells here. But a normal day for me starts off with about an hour walk. Then I'll come home and I'll stretch, do some yoga for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, depending upon the day and depending upon the surf. If there's no surf, that's when I'll revert to either bike riding or rowing machine. I have a stationary bike and a rowing machine at home. Or if it's nice and I'm in New Jersey, I'll ride my bike. And stretching is a big part, yoga, a big part. And I've discovered a couple of, I wouldn't call it yoga. There's some routines I've discovered online which start literally with your feet and work your way up to your head, just kind of moving everything and rotating everything, keeping things moving. I try to rest whenever possible in the afternoon. My friends laugh at me. I call it a SCAN, senior citizen afternoon nap. And I try and get at least a 20-minute nap in the afternoon. Then again, depending upon surf conditions and everything else, I will generally go for another walk or perhaps another surf. And that pretty much outlines my routine. I follow through with some bands and all the exercises, physical therapy exercises I got from my shoulder. I'm always looking around online for different coaches or different websites, Instagram sites that give you tips about surfing. I was on the advisory board back about 10 or 15 years ago of a group called Surf Stronger. We put out some DVDs. And so I still have that. I have one of those big, Swiss balls that I work on. One of the most important parts of keeping fit to surf, especially as we age, is popping up off the surfboard. That's probably the most difficult thing as we get older. So I'm always working on something and looking for coaching techniques that would help me pop up. So that pretty much covers my routine. I don't run anymore. I guess the way I live at this point is I don't want to do anything for fun that would jeopardize me doing what I love.
Tell us a little bit about your approach to diet and nutrition.
I don't eat a lot of red meat. I'm a pretty routine guy. So my breakfast, I've been drinking athletic greens for probably 4 years now. Start my day off with that and usually a banana. That's before my walk. My breakfasts usually include protein, whether it be yogurt, a lot of fruit, some granola or nuts. And that's usually, it's kind of a modification of an intermittent fasting program. I'll usually have that about 11:30 after I've surfed. Or after I've done, this morning, there was no surf, so I walked, then I did some stretching and some body work, calisthenic kind of things in the house. And then I ate my breakfast at about 11:30. I don't eat lunch. I drink a lot of green tea and a lot of water. I do drink coffee. My alcohol is very limited. Occasionally, I'll have a glass of wine or a glass of rum, and very rarely I'll have a beer. I don't do that very much. My dinner is usually fish or chicken, and I was at the market yesterday, and most of what was in my cart were fruits and vegetables. I try to follow sort of an Andrew Weil triangle of what you should eat, where it's mostly fruits, vegetables, whole grains. I try to avoid as much sugar as I can, but I do have a sweet tooth, so I let myself have a couple cookies here or there, or some nuts that might be covered in honey or coffee, toffee. But an occasional treat of ice cream, but try to avoid those things. I was scared when I was very young. On my father's side, my father is one of three brothers. None of them made it out of their 50s, and they all had heart conditions. And I remember in college listening to a lecture about heart disease, and it scared the pants off of me because I'm thinking, oh, I've got all that coming from my father's side. Luckily, on my mother's side, I have good genes. They all made it into their 90s. And I also do a bit of mindful meditation on a regular day so that I don't stress the small stuff.
So what would you say in general is your motivation at this point in life to keep extremely active and surf and do these other things?
My motivation is that's how I define an enjoyable life. A good life for me is, you work well, you play well, and you love well. And if you look at the research that they've done on the blue zones, the people that live over 100, they've always found that having some purpose in life, keeping physically active, and having a lot of good social support are the things. And my motivation is to live as long as I can and be as healthy as I can. And I know this from my own doctoral work, both in psychology and stress management. Having great social support systems, having the ability to be mindful and stay in the moment, learn how to breathe appropriately, laugh when you can, keep yourself psychologically and mentally active. I've for years, I wrote a column in the Asbury Park Press and the Atlantic City Press, a surfing column. I did that for 4 or 5 years. And then I had a blog that I've written off and on, probably for about 15 or 20 years, called Surfing the Waves of Life. So I continue to write. I'm trying to put all that stuff together, hopefully to get a book at some point in time. That's kind of my next goal. And I think being a model for my kids and my grandkids, that staying healthy, staying happy, staying fit is really what life is all about. When I was in practice, very often I'd sit in my office and there'd be people who were younger than me. And, I'd look at their diet and their exercise and their stress levels, and they just weren't healthy. And I also looked at someone like Doc Paskowitz, who is a good example, who lived and surfed into his 90s. We're all going to die eventually, and we're all going to have some deterioration. There's a real interesting book, I think it was called Younger Next Year. It was written by a physician and a writer together, and they were talking about aging and what you do for good aging. And if you work at it, you can stay pretty healthy and pretty fit until you get into your 80s. After 80s, like any machine, our body starts to deteriorate. But the slope of deterioration, if you've been fit and keep working at being fit, is a lot more gradual. So, I doubt when I'm in my 80s or 90s that I'll be riding a shortboard, but as long as I can ride a longboard and get in the water I'll be happy.
Looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently in regards to your health and fitness?
There were periods, certainly when I was in my doctoral program, there was lapses when life was busy and I was a graduate student. I had a full-time practice and some kids. So my priorities moved away from that. I've played, and I use the word play, I've played with different forms of diet throughout my life. I was a very unsuccessful vegetarian back in the 70s because I was uneducated. So I would have done that over again a little bit. But no, I think that I'm pretty content in that I've always been looking at it. Studying fitness and studying overall health has been one of my both professional and personal interests. So those are things I've always looked at and always worked for.
All right. So you mentioned something about being online. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your social media footprint and Well, just give us some details and whatever you'd like to share about it.
The Facebook group Surfers 70 and Over has been some of the most interesting things that I've been doing as of late. You can take a look at that group. It's open to the public. There's videos of men and women in their 70s and over being active. And I also got a lot of comments from people. It's inspirational. I do have my own Facebook page and an Instagram page, which is Dr. Viejo. As I mentioned, the Surfing the Waves of Life blog, I'm going back to doing that a little bit. And my son and I are working on the Surfers 70 and Over website and moving in that direction a little bit more. That pretty much represents what I've been doing in social media. It's fun to look at it. It's fun to connect with people around the world who have similar interests, and I love it.
Well, I will be sure to post all your links in the description below. So if you want to find Bill, you can go chase him down with any of those links down below. Bill, I want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing what makes you an autumn athlete that's not done yet. I want to close up today by giving you the floor to offer any final thoughts to our audience.
Get moving. No one wants to be one of those folks who gets old in a way that you wouldn't want to get old. We all are going to die. We're all going to age. And the more we keep moving, the more we eat appropriately, have a passion, a physical passion that we can engage in, and especially a passion that cuts across an age group, whether it be running, whether it be biking, whether it be surfing, anything that puts you in touch with people of various age groups will keep you young. My late wife used to tease me. I'd be there talking to some, teenagers and whatever. She'd call them my young surfer friends. We could still talk for hours about the waves or the conditions. And I'm sure other sports have the same thing. And that helps keep you young as well. So keep moving. Don't sweat the small stuff. Have a passion, good friends, and a family that you love and that love you. That'll get us going as long as we can, healthy.
Well, there you go. Great advice from Bill Rosenblatt, another autumn athlete that's not done yet. Remember, folks, keep moving, set your goals, and train hard to achieve them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next time.